And then all that dried up on us. So we lost probably $1 million of investment commitments all in the same month. So it's like this roller coaster of emotions you go through. Like you're like, okay, we're going to do this alone. That doesn't work. Okay. Second strategy, raise money individually, sell off equity in that specific location based off of our performance, which at that time was still okay. Wasn't knocking it out of the park, but it was okay. It was enough. And then that falls off. And so then we had to swallow and just say, we're done. I had to cut it loose.
Welcome to Through the Dip, the show about what it's really like to be an entrepreneur and the hard-won lessons learned while navigating your company through the dip. My name is Steven Souter, but before we get started on today's episode, this show is brought to you by Hustlefish, a digital marketing agency that can get you unstuck and moving forward. If you have questions about where your next customer should come from or how to grow and scale, head over to throughthedip.com/marketing for a free marketing audit. Now, on today's episode, how Salem Thine went from being a high school dropout to becoming highly successful in the nuclear Navy and has now launched one of the most advanced virtual reality gaming places in all of the United States. I got the opportunity to test out some of the games and I was completely blown away. I'm used to playing virtual reality on MetaQuest or even Apple's virtual reality system, but this is something I have never seen before. But even though the product is incredible and amazing, ramping up the business has been hard. One of the lessons that really stood out to me was Salem's ability to navigate through some of the really hard times with the team by filling them in on exactly what was going on, leading through transparency. So often, it's easy as a leader to cover your weaknesses or not be fully transparent. But by being transparent, you can get a team to buy in and understand exactly where you're going and fostering an even higher trust environment than you ever would have. This is Salem's story about owning your actions and the consequences and separating emotions from business and navigating the turbulent water of trying to grow and scale a brand new company.
I think I'm a person that likes challenge. So, when I failed high school or I drop out after I failed, that stuck with me pretty good. And I never wanted to feel that way again. That was important. The problem was that I had failed, so I kind of had a little chip on my shoulder. The way I got into the nuclear world was that chip. A friend of mine from high school said, "Hey, Salem, you need this," because I was just doing odd jobs. After I dropped out of high school, I probably had 4 different jobs at the same time. I had this principle: if I could work every day for about 12 to 16 hours a day, then I wouldn't have to think about my failure probably. Right, and probably prove it wrong a little bit, but I really wasn't going anywhere. I did great jobs managing restaurants when I was 18 years old and really successful at everything I was doing, but really kind of still had that stigma of failure.
Yeah. What caused that failure in high school?
I was really dumb, smart kid. I think there's a couple things if I go back, I've thought about it a lot in the probably, 30 years since then. But I wanted to challenge that teacher a lot. That was my third high school in 3 years or 4 years. So a third high school total. My father moved a lot when I was growing up, and he wasn't military. He was just, had gotten his PhD and had professor gigs. So you kind of try to move to where you can. And so I was just completely disenfranchised with school in general. And so my senior year, I was in AP English class, and my teacher was very progressive. I didn't feel like doing homework and challenging her on assignments and reading assignments and the books we read, and I dug myself a gigantic hole. And then I thought I could bail myself out of that hole like we do when we're young, right? And probably when we're old too, we probably still do that. We dig some holes and we think we can get out. That's something that we all do. And I tried to dig myself out. I thought I would, and I didn't. She probably gave me the best lesson of my life, which was consequence to actions. People, you could say, "Oh, it was unfair. You did all this work. You had a deal. All this stuff." But the fact was, my actions put this consequence in place, and she was strong enough at that time to make sure it happened. Crushed me though. Crushed me. And so I had all these plans in my head of college and this and what I was going to do and everything. And that just all kind of went out the window in one day. So I tended to kind of retreat. I just said, no, screw school. I'll get my GED. I went and got GED. And then I started doing odd jobs with this idea that I'd go to school, but with no plan, you know.
What did that feel like? Were you angry about the situation or discouraged or?
It was a good question. At first I was, I mean, I still remember the time that I found out, right? So like when I first found out, okay, so it's the day of graduation, so it's at night. So that day we're like playing volleyball with my friends out in California, right? So you're outside, you're playing with your friends. I'm sure I'm going to graduate. We have this post-graduation party up at this old, it sounds really weird, old landfill that we go and have bonfires at.
Okay.
And I walk into the house and my dad's sitting there and my father's just looking at me and I'm like, okay, something's wrong. You know, when you're a kid and like you feel the tension in the air. I think I still have it, but you know it. But you know that look, right? And he just tells me, like, there's nothing I can tell you that is going to make you feel any worse than you're going to feel. But you're not graduating. Cue ears ringing, feeling dislocated out of your body, feeling like you're floating away was the kind of the feeling I had at that moment. And there was really not much I could do. I wasn't going to go to graduation. I was just maybe locking into a depression or something. And my friend's mother said, you should come sit with me. And you know, it's really great when you have those kind of people that see what you need and at that time, because you're not your best, you know, advocate at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I sat there and it was crazy. I sat up in the audience with all the parents and everybody, and they had the stage. And this is back when they had like a stage and sit on the stage, you know, like now it's like down and you walk up, but back then you'd sit there, right? You'd be sitting there for like an hour under the lights. And there was an empty seat with my name on it because they had all the names. So everybody knew where to sit.
Someone didn't get the memo.
Yeah. They didn't get the memo. So I'm sitting there and every other seat's full because that's where they expected to graduate. And except for me, and they left that seat up there. And I just sat there probably for the majority of the time, kind of numb, just looking at that seat. And the seat was next to, I write it a little bit in the book, but it's next to Lynn Tran, right? So there's no way, like Lynn Tran was not a great friend of mine. She was in my class, in the AP English class, and I knew her, and we were acquaintances probably and stuff, but I still won't ever forget that name because it would have been my name by alphabetical order than hers. And so I was sitting there going, I knew I was supposed to be sitting next to Lynn. And so I never forget that. So I just stared at the seat the entire time and just said, I don't ever want to feel like this again. That same friend whose mother made me go to graduation came out and he said, man, I'm joining the nuclear Navy, Salem, right? And he's like, you should come with me. I'm like, what are you doing, right? Military, what are you doing? He's like, look, it's the hardest educational program in the military, 85% dropout rate. You need this. And I need you to come in with me. So he kind of like pressured me. He was my best friend at the time. So I said, okay. He goes, what are you doing? You know, you're working in restaurants, cleaning carpets, detailing cars, you know, where are you going with your life? You're way too talented for that. So I got my diploma, went into the nuclear Navy, realized I'm really good at that. That I'm a smart person, that I'm really good at operations, really good at putting systems together and understanding the interconnectivity of systems. And I excelled in the Navy. I mean, I was one of the best of what I did. Promoted early every time, first time up. Was kind of known as one of the best in the nuclear Navy at the time I was in there. And then I left that after 11 and a half years. I wanted to be near my family a little more often, the pace, the tempo. I wasn't convinced that I wanted to live that Navy life.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where kind of you have to do it all or none, you know, right? So I made a change at that point. And I write a little bit about that in the book and the change that I went through there, which was real hard. That was probably one of the hardest times of my life. And then about a year later, got in a job offer at a nuclear enrichment plant because when I got in the Navy, my monster.com resume was still out there or something. No idea. I really wasn't doing much in my life at that point, but just trying to get away from being militarized, kind of being in that mode. I think it was important to kind of decompress.
Yeah.
And then really going through some dark times there too, personally. And then started a nuclear enrichment. was really good at that too. Started at the bottom of that business and worked my way all the way up. Did international operations. People understood it. Kind of had to reset and redo it. Uh, and then I was kind of figuring I was done with that. I'd gone as far as I could, and I wanted to do startup world. It's really stupid, actually. I'm sitting here talking to you about it, and it's kind of
Why is it stupid?
it's just like, man, like it's not, but it is. It's like I think I envy people that are able to do one thing really well for a long time,
Hmm.
that just commit completely into being a master of their craft. I think I envy that behavior because I don't have it. I'm not wired that way, so I think a lot of times we envy what you're not.
Because
I think we envy what we're not because I think that when you see, like, I think you always want something different. I think humans are in general are just wired that way, right? We're always wired to evolve and to look for something different. And so what I find myself is, man, it would be really great if I was a singer and I just wanted to sing all the time and I really developed my craft and I was the world's best. And I have a drive to be the best at everything I do. And so that probably drives a little bit of that envious nature, because my other problem is I like to do a lot of different things. And so I get kind of bored with certain things, or less inclined after I achieve success. I want to find the next success. I'm a mountain climber.
okay,
Like, I'm a personality, right? I am a mountain climber. I want to climb every mountain, and I want to be told I can't do it, and I want to prove someone wrong, right? That's just kind of how it is. Um,
do you think that like sentiment of wanting to prove people wrong is what powered you to join the Navy and then
Yeah.
do startup stuff? Like,
yeah,
show like, hey, like maybe I failed high school, but like,
but I can do it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's that. I think what I've realized probably in the last 5 or 10 years, some of my upbringing, personally, I think my father did his best. My parents divorced very early on, and my father did his best, but he never really wanted to raise kids, and he ended up raising us. And he definitely wasn't the greatest at supporting me and telling me that I could do something. Actually, what I got told a lot is I couldn't. And I think what that did for me is provide this kind of drive to prove, him and everybody else wrong. You're overlooked, right? And you're maybe marginalized as a child. And so I think that drove me. I realized that over time, of course, right? You sit back and go, man, why am I so crazy starting all this new stuff and doing things? And I'm still successful at them, but man, my life would be a lot easier if I just stuck at this job for 25, 30 years, right? I wouldn't have to worry about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because when you want to change, you want it to be great. You also risk a lot, right? You go through a lot of pain. You go through a lot of suffering. I think when you want to improve where you are, it requires pain and sacrifice. So my life, I chose a life of pain and sacrifice, probably try to prove the teacher wrong, my father wrong, everybody that doubted me wrong, which is kind of nuts and such. But at the same time, I find a lot of satisfaction in it.
So then why start a virtual reality gaming? Like
Yeah.
you get in the nuclear side of stuff. I'm sure you're making quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Those aren't bad paying
My
jobs.
wife can remind you about that, how much I've given up over the years doing this. They're not, virtual reality. The crappiest part is this just like fell in my lap. And it was one day at my other job. We were on Fridays, and one of the guys that worked with me, he's one of the founders here too, I showed a video of this, and it was in France, right? And I just looked, I go, that's really cool. That could do good here. So
Yeah.
let's go run the traps, so to speak, right? Like, okay, let's ask all the questions. Is it ready? Can we bring it over? Can we make money? Financial analysis, put together a pitch deck. I went to get my CEO peer group. I was in a peer group at the time. And I put a really bad pitch together on purpose because I really somewhere just kind of didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I put it together, and like half the group was like, hey, how much you want?
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, this is something.
Because the business model was so compelling, or because like the novel idea of VR and being one of the first people to like really do it in an advanced way?
That's a good question. And I've asked myself that. I think it's a couple parts. I'm really good at pitching ideas.
Okay.
And getting buy-in. So that might be a bad thing sometimes, right? Because maybe the idea is not worthwhile. So you have to be careful and know that maybe you could convince, you could encourage people to see the benefits and stuff without seeing the detractors. But I think this is the greatest virtual reality experience that in a gaming sense that exists in the world. And I loved it, and I still do to this point.
Mm.
There's a challenge in the virtual reality business, right? And so I had no business coming into here to begin with, to be honest, right? I didn't have any background in entertainment, any of that stuff. But I do believe that business is pretty much the same, and you just have to learn the language. And so we start off in this journey about 3 years ago, actually.
Okay.
So it was October 3 years ago that we kind of really started kicking this off. And I really was at a good transition point anyway, for the other business I was in, so I kinda felt like it made sense, and, man, I learned a lot, and so the positive, I think, is when you do this, you learn so much. You go through so much pain and so much suffering because it's outside your comfort zone, right? It's outside of what you know, but that means you're learning nonstop,
Mm.
and so you have to take that reflection and go back, right? If I'm gonna climb a mountain, let's say, okay, and this is my first mountain, right? I'm just gonna be miserable most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, "Man, why am I doing this? My feet hurt, I got blisters, I didn't know how to do this," all that kinda stuff. The second one, it's not gonna be as hard.
Yeah.
Right? The third one, you're gonna know to pack this much. You're gonna buy better shoes. You're gonna start planning stuff. You're gonna get in shape. You're gonna do that kind of stuff. And so you're gonna be able to apply those learnings. And then before you know it, you're achieving things you've never been able to do. And I
Yeah.
believe that's what business is all about. Like you have to get to a comfort of failing and being like, okay, it's not me that's failing. It's the way we did it. And it means maybe we'll succeed next time.
And now EVA is a franchise.
Yes, franchise.
And so, like, I've heard a lot of people talk about, like, the benefits of a franchise because you have somebody that has all this learned lesson that you
Yeah.
can tap into.
Yeah.
Because this is the first time they're in the United States, right?
Yeah.
There's no.
They had 3 facilities and 2 of them had just opened up.
Okay.
When we signed with them. I mean, retrospect, definitely early, right? And
Yeah.
I felt like that was probably our biggest risk was the lack of that. Because a franchise, yeah, usually there's like 100 others or there are 50 others, and they've proven success over, multiple years. These guys, as far as the business side of running the brick and mortar business, had very limited, really experience doing that, and none in America.
Hmm.
And I do firmly believe Europe markets and American markets are much different, especially with entertainment.
Yeah.
We are the kings of entertainment here, in a family entertainment environment, even more so. Our arcades are started here.
Hmm.
I mean, there were no arcades anywhere in the world in the 80s except the United States, right? And we're just basically the same thing with more modern and different, attractions. So it was a beast. But I just believe that a good idea can always be there. And I believe myself a lot. I believe that the hard work, the thoughts, the way that I operate, the way that I surround myself with great people, and we all align to those same principles, especially of accountability and just taking it for what it is and not making it personal.
Yeah.
I think that can provide success. And I think we've done a really tremendous job to this point, to take a concept that's never existed anywhere in the United States, North America, anywhere, bring it into a place, prove it up, and have the success and the experience that we have is unbelievable.
What does the business model look like for virtual reality gaming?
It's horrible normally. So most industries failed. There's a couple of good players in the industry that have struggled and have very large backing from private equity or venture capitalists. And those are still succeeding. Anybody like us has effectively failed over the years. And there's reasons for that. The reasons are they generally just do one thing and they don't combine it with a lot of other attractions. And it's one of the things that we're focused on here, disrupting that. Additionally, people just don't know virtual reality very well, and they have a certain conception of what it is. And technology has really advanced a lot, and I'm sure you'll experience it today, but it's a different world, and it's amazing what has been done there. So we're probably just early And if you know business succeeds because of timing, number one.
Yeah.
Like, I can have a great team, great funding, great everything, but timing can be everything. So, we'll find out if we're too early still. But being too early just means you're one step closer to where the timing makes sense.
Yeah.
And, whether we succeed or fail with this venture, I know that the learnings here will provide success for the next person if it's us or somebody else.
Yeah.
And so, I think if you step into business thinking that and knowing that you're an instrumental step, and that if you wanna stay engaged in the next step, then you can.
Yeah.
And so then it's not a failure, right? Like, it's just a learning point, because what we've done here, nobody's done.
Well,
So it's, something that really, the knowledge, the IP that we generated just by operating and understanding how to pull people in and stuff here and what to operate, is no one has.
yeah.
So, whether this location will be a success in the long term, I know that we'll be involved in the next ones no matter what.
Yeah.
So, you just have to have that mentality.
And the primary, like, revenue driver is people coming in,
Yeah.
playing a game. How long do the games last?
30 minutes.
Okay. And what does it cost for 30 minutes?
Our cost here is, $34 and $44.
Okay.
So it depends on peak periods or not. I think it's actually pretty reasonable. Some of our competitors charge more. I never wanted to do that. I wanted to establish the price basis of where I think it is appropriate. And then as we add more stuff, and if we've added more stuff recently, and we'll continue to add stuff in here, that single use price point comes down because you try to bulk it and bundle it with
Yeah.
several things in here. The key to running an entertainment business is bringing people in the door, keeping them here for 2 hours. There's a magical, pretty much 2-hour period.
Okay.
If you can keep them in the door and inside your building for 2 hours, then you can sell them drinks and food, because you'll tend to do that, and they'll stay for an extra hour. They'll tend to spend more money on other things because now they're enjoying themselves and they like the other stuff that you have here. If you miss that 2-hour window, you get people coming in, they do a single use, then they leave and they go off to the rest of their entertainment night.
From a pie chart of revenue, how much of it comes from the actual gaming versus like the restaurant or other games and other things that we play?
Yeah, good question. I think we get about, it's too high. It's about 50% from the game. I prescribe to that it should be about a third is your primary driver. So like our anchor attraction is what we call it. And we're the only family entertainment center that I know of in the world, and I'm pretty sure still, that uses virtual reality as an anchor attraction. And then you should have events and your booster attractions, food and beverage, making up the other 60%. So our events do pretty well, but we still have too much driven here. And that's one of the things, if you see the facility, we have some more things to add to allow our booster attractions to kind of generate more revenue. Key in family entertainment is arcades.
Yeah.
You got to have an arcade in America. It just is where we like it's like peanut butter and jelly without the peanut butter, kind of, right? Like it's not the same, because obviously not. It's like a requirement. And so that's the next thing that we'll be adding here now that we understand kind of where our customers are coming from, who they are and stuff.
You're bringing a brand new concept that is like the best top tier virtual reality gaming experience that someone can have in the United States right now.
Absolutely.
And so there's probably a lot of work you have to do to build it. But once you like get through the build process, does it just like launch and go?
It's crazy. Like, so if I tell a story, it's absolutely crazy, right? So, like, I would say, number one, if I was from the outside looking in, we had no business doing what we're doing, like zero. None of us had experience in entertainment, or construction, or really retail. Right, like that. Like, I had experience in retail a long time ago, right? But it'd been a long time. I'd been doing nuclear, engineering and other stuff, and oil and gas and stuff for a while. And so we had a belief in ourselves. And so we basically, one thing I believe in no matter what is you bring in experts. So if you don't know something, ask, right? Bring in people, find ones you trust, and rely on their advice and their expertise. So we reached out really quick, and we found like an interior designer, we found a construction manager, we found people to help us in those areas that we were weak, and we trusted them. You still have oversight, but you try to trust them. We had to align them to what we wanted to do, what we wanted to achieve. And then the craziest part is even our company in France, didn't really understand all the requirements of building this, right? Especially in the United States. And so we had to kind of figure it out ourselves. And despite all that, we built this place in 4.5 months.
Wow.
We raised enough money to build it and build it in 4.5 months, not knowing a single thing, not knowing how it would work, not having a template for the business plan. There's no comp, as I would say, in the business world. Like, so everybody else that does this does very small virtual reality, no food and beverage, no lounging areas, nothing like that. And so we were basically breaking the mold. And then everybody else in the family entertainment center world are all arcades and bowling and things like that. So we don't have any kind of comparison whatsoever to do this. We put it all together, 4.5 months, opened the doors, still really had no idea what we were doing, how to market it, where to market it, and just did our best. And I just think that I think any person can achieve a very high level of success just being driven and with the rule of asking for help and, tapping into their network. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I want to do a podcast, I could ask you a lot of questions and you could help. I wouldn't necessarily be good at it, but I would probably get somewhere with it. And we just kept doing that. And it's been up and down.
So you open the doors and things
Yeah.
are going really good, but then
Yeah, then it doesn't. So open the doors, all this hype in the grand opening. I remember sitting with my wife and it was like the third month of operation, right? And we're having filling rates on the weekends of like 96% fill rate. And fill rates is basically like how much sessions can we sell and how many do we sell?
Wow.
So like we're selling 96% of all available sessions that we have here, killing it. And I'm like, babe, we did it, right? Like this is really going to work. I was really surprised, honestly, right? 'Cause you don't know it's really going to work. And so we got real aggressive at thinking about expanding at that point, which I would suggest to anybody watching, if you're doing a new concept, don't get it right. Spend 3-4 years getting the first concept right before you expand, because people will want to be in the hype of the expansion, but there's so much that can happen. And what happened was exactly after that, we walk into the summer. And everybody changes their minds in summer, right? They go to summer vacations. The economy at the time was pretty good, so a lot of people had money to go out because house rates were through the roof. Interest rates were super low, so everybody's refining their house and got tens of thousands of dollars of cash, and so they're going on their dream vacations and all that stuff. And they just like the fourth month or something like that, all of a sudden just the basement dropped out.
Wow.
And we went from like 96, 97% fill rates to 60.
Oh man.
Right. Almost overnight. And was like, whoa, because we're staffing for this many people. We're really kind of moving. We're trying to advance and do more stuff, looking at another location already so we can build, because, hey, let's, caught lightning in a bottle. Let's go. And then the next month is even worse. Right. And so you're kind of leveraged because you're new. You're really, there's a lot of debt, a lot of stuff going on. You have a lot of liability and you have no or very little income. And we were fat operationally, because we kind of thought those days were consistently going to be there.
Yeah.
Everybody makes this mistake, I think, right? So we made a lot of cuts, but it was definitely, that was like a sobering moment. Okay, what do we do? And I'm just not a person that likes to wait a long time before making changes.
Yeah.
'Cause I just believe that you should always assume the situation that exists is going to exist for the next couple of years, and then make decisions because you'll be safe. May not take advantage of everything, but you'll be safer. And so we made quick corrections on that, but it stopped everything for us, because now it really drove home. We don't have comparisons. I don't have year on years. I don't know what to expect. What else don't we know? Where and how bad is this going to get?
Yeah. Because is it just are you thinking about it this just could be like the hype from the new open, and now this is what it's going to be like?
Yeah.
Or is it a seasonal thing? Or
so is it seasonal? Is it hype? We changed marketing a little bit, right? So we turned over more of our marketing over to the European company to drive it as they were driving. There's like 5 or 6 things to change. And so now you're trying to get data to say which one of these things is the driver, or is a little bit of everything, or what can you tackle? And I don't think we ever really had an answer. There's just still too many things out there, and we've just not been able to get the data. As a franchisee, that's the downside sometimes is you won't get, the transparency of data that you need to understand that. And so we just, as always, circle the troops and say, "Hey, okay, guys, let's assume this is going to exist. How do we survive? How do we thrive? Let's take each one of these areas and try to tackle it individually and see if it gets better." And so we really started pushing more on events, kind of featuring more events, changed our marketing again, more about relational marketing,
Yeah.
how cool it is to be here and showing some of the evidence, still with no understanding what July, August, September, October, November, December, or even those months of the grand opening, which was January and the following February, March, April. So we still have another 8 months at that point that I have no idea
Wow.
what's seasonal, what's going on. And then at the same time, that summer is when we start getting the large interest rate hikes. That halts those plans, halts the second location. What are we going to do? Investment money stops because we're not going to do more locations necessarily, or we're not quite sure about it. Plus, we had a couple dips, in how much we're making. So, and people are like, well, let's just see 3 or 4 more months of those original numbers. And you're like, oh no, right? It's such an interesting place in business because when you operate a place like this, we generate, 1.6 to $2 million of revenue a year.
Okay.
Healthy. Most people go, that's great. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
There's almost no credit facilities for anything over 1 million, less than 5 million. So no one invests in that group. And it's funny, we talk to investment groups, everybody's in 5 million, 10 million plus, or really early stage business where they're going to be angel investors, give you 50,000, 100,000, but your business is really probably less than 1 million in revenue. And so your costs aren't extreme. And so you have all these great angel investors, friends and family that we had initially. And then we were successful, but you had to be really successful to get the institutional funding to come behind you as well.
Is that a risk factor?
It is for me now. And I hate to say that I didn't know that as well going in. And I think that's not talked about. And I talk about a lot now. Out of my experience, I want other entrepreneurs out there to understand that if you're going to start a business, you got to be okay with being 1 million-ish and just kind of sitting there. But if you want to grow, you need to fund your business to grow to past 5 million at that initial stage of funding. And if you can't do that, you don't have that assurance, then you really just need to maybe think about something else or just be satisfied with where you're going to be at.
Yeah.
Because between 1 and 5 million, you're really just relying on a bank. And you're relying on a bank to feel like they want to give you the money, which means you're now subject to interest rate changes, just economic conditions.
Yeah.
Just like failing high school, it put me in a place that felt very familiar that I was not able to control our destiny.
Yeah.
Right. So if I wanted to get capital to add things into here, it was almost impossible.
Wow.
I'm sure it's possible, but they're at 20-something% interest rates, something that will cripple your business most likely.
Yeah. So you started expanding into a second location, and did you take on debt to expand it?
Yeah.
And
we didn't take on debt, but we took on investment, so equity debt.
Yeah.
And also signed a lease and started the construction plans, and we're ready to kick off construction. And we were going for our loan like we had done for this business, right? And we wanted to actually do a little bit smarter basis on the loan, small business administration loan and stuff. But you needed a lot of personal guarantors.
Okay.
So basically they look at it as an unsecured loan at that point because we don't have a lot. We don't have $5 million of revenue-ish to kind of say, hey, this could soften our blow if we want to loan the money to you. So we couldn't really access that credit.
Yeah.
We couldn't access that loan, and I'm signed into a lease, and I don't have enough. A lot of my guarantors and the investors that we originally had were under the same pressure for the businesses they're in, that they had the money in. The economy really swung hard in that year, where people started losing a lot of money on investments and other things. This is that post-COVID time period where I think it was like the 2 years after-ish, or
Mhm.
year and a half after, where we didn't really talk about the economy being tough, but that's why interest rates were climbing. There's a lot of stuff that happened that nobody wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And so now I'm sitting here with a lease and all the liability associated with this long-term lease. Paid a lot of money for construction plans and drawings and everything ready to go, and I can't pull a trigger on a location.
How do you, like, emotionally and mentally, as someone trying to lead this company, like,
I don't
process
know.
that?
It's, I think what I say today, at that moment, I didn't, it's just, you take it for what it is, but, uh, it definitely hit my internal, issues I had with myself about not being good
Mm.
enough, all that kind of stuff. Like, it was a reflection of me and my lack of foresight and things like this and what was going on, because you're really just kind of like stranded there. You're like, oh my God, just this is it.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do? Like, we're done.
Did you really think you were done?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and because there's 5-year lease signed. We've been paying rent on the place, which was the worst for us, right? But we thought we were going to get to this point, so we're like, okay, maybe we lose 100,000 or 200,000, kind of early, but it's more important to get this done.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had to sit there and just say, okay, what's the benefit of doing it? What's the benefit of not doing it? Right? Like, if we walk away, from this, what's going to happen? I had to talk to the landlords there, and we thought we were still going to maybe get through it. We had some investment partners that really wanted to come in and say, okay, great. We'll invest in this specific stuff and things like that. Um, and it flips over to the new year, and then all that dried up on
Mm.
us. So we lost probably $1 million of investment commitments all in the same month. So it's like this roller coaster of emotions you go through. Like, you're like, okay, we're going to do this with a loan. That doesn't work. Okay. Second strategy, raise money individually, sell off equity in that specific location based off of our performance, which at that time was still okay. Wasn't knocking it out of the park, but it was okay. It was enough. Um, and then that falls off. And so then we had to swallow and just say, we're done.
Mm.
I had to cut it loose. And so we, lost several hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably over $500,000 just in that venture. And so that's now liquidity that we don't have. At the same time as all of this, we're kind of having some issues with our franchisor. Their concept of what it should be versus our concept of what we think it should be in the American economy. And we can't resolve those differences. And so
Were those differences brought on because you're looking at ways to get more revenue, or were they always there and they were just trying to, like, address it at this point?
it was because we want more revenue, and we felt we wanted to address it at that point, because when we first had the drop, we said, okay, well, obviously we looked at our stay times, we looked at all the magical parameters, and we're like, we're not achieving them, so we need
Mhm.
to achieve them. So what we do know is we need to get to these, like, kind of thumb rules. And so in order to do that in the U.S., we had a plan. We pulled in one of the best experts in family entertainment centers in the world, probably, if the country for sure. And, we had him come in and say, this is what I would do.
Mhm.
Propose that plan, rejected, propose the plan, rejected, back and forth, and got very, very hostile between us. Because, in all reality, we're trying to change their baby.
Yeah.
Right. And their baby's working in Europe, and it's not quite working here. So it got pretty heated in that year, in the beginning of that year, because, we're losing money.
What does that look like when it gets heated with a franchisee and a franchisor? Because, like, you kind of both need each other.
Yeah, well, because we're the only place in the United States, anywhere in North America. We're the kind of the showroom for their expansion here.
Yeah.
Um, we need them, right? Because they give us access to the technology and all the support associated with it. Um, it's really uncomfortable.
Mm.
And what happens is nothing happens. So it just is like a stalemate, and nobody wins.
Mm.
They don't win if we go bankrupt and close our doors, because it means the first franchisee on their franchise disclosure is bankrupt,
Yeah.
right? So that means there's something wrong with the plan. It doesn't help us, because we're gone, so our entity's gone. So it's like a lose-lose.
Yeah.
So we took all this momentum we had, cashed it out basically into nothing of value whatsoever. And now we're sitting here in really hard economic times without cash, without a good relationship, without anything, and just going, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
I can't fundraise at that point. I can't, I think people could. I got told, like, man, too bad you're a good guy, Salem. Really, like, one of our investors said, man, too bad you're a good person. Because there's a lot of people that would just go out and fake it till they make it,
Yeah.
thing, right? I feel that I can never do that. It is what it is, right? And that's my job.
Was it tempting though?
Absolutely, absolutely, right? You don't wanna reveal all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you're gonna resolve it or not, right? So you don't wanna like make all your investors worried that that and then if they're really worried about something that you feel that you can control, if you get them too worried, then all of a sudden now that's going to apply more pressure and more oversight, even though they don't really have a lot, but just now you're dealing with all their questions and their harassment, right? When they should. It's their money too. To couple all that, this property that we're in was sold to a new
I don't know.
landlord. And right now we're in litigation with that landlord. And I'm not, I can't, I don't, I can say what I think, but I've never felt like they wanted us here. So they bought this property because this building, we made it an amazing building, but this doesn't fit on their development. So we have a horrible relationship with them and a very adversarial relationship with our new landlord. Our previous landlord were investors in us, so it's a very beneficial relationship. So when you're having a little bit of a struggle or you have some bad months, you can kind of work together to see it through. And now if we have a bad month, we get leaned on harder. And so it's kind of like, it was just an amazing things like just that all stacked together.
Yeah. Wow.
Kind of crazy.
So you have a bad relationship with your franchisor.
Yeah.
And you are struggling with cash flow. You tried to open up a new location that completely tanked.
Yeah.
Things with the landlord aren't necessarily going great.
No, they're not.
How do you start working your way out of the situation?
I think now we're on this, we have a path. And so, one of the first steps was working with the franchisor to get our relationship better. So backing off from a lot of the anger and giving some space into the situation, acknowledging that we both kind of need each other. And so how can we work on this together? And so we've renegotiated our relationship. So that's been negotiated. It should be finalized in the next week or two. So what that allows us to do is to do the additions to the place that we feel would make it extremely successful and investable. The relationship with the landlord, I have no idea. And I think that's probably where we're got the least amount of understanding.
Yeah.
I'd kind of gotten it better, but it's still, I don't know. I can just say that. And that's like I think it's on a daily basis. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of keep that wolf kind of threat, the wagon to the side and keeping it a place that it hopefully won't kill the wagon train.
Yeah.
And now my next focus is money. So I just trying to like, what can I do? If I have a pathway, I had to line it up. This is the pathway for us to get successful, which is renegotiate so we can add more stuff, then add more stuff. Okay. I don't have money to add more stuff. Okay. How do I access money to add more stuff? That's the next challenge. And so we're working on that now. We have all of the stuff ready to go, ready to pull the trigger. We have all the new things all the improvements we've been wanting to do for years on this place ready to go. And so I think, the next 3 to 6 months is we will either completely climb out and be okay. I see the path there, or we won't. And the nature of business is sometimes you just don't.
Yeah.
And the only way I've been okay with that, the kind of person I am, is I've learned that I think to be truly successful in business, and for people watching, listening to this, and you're in a position anywhere close to this, which happens every day, you as an entrepreneur have to separate your passion for what you personally love to do, which is a challenge, right? As most entrepreneurs are similar, they want to challenge themselves. They want to achieve more than what the standard is. You have to separate that passion from your emotions. You have to separate your emotions from your actions. And I say separate your emotions from your passion, because you're here to make money. You're here to succeed and to prove the doubters wrong, or whatever it is that you're driving, whatever's driving you. It's always your passion, right? Because what they say, if you start your business, it's follow your passion, do your passion stuff, right? You have to separate that emotion, because you're going to have these dips.
Yeah.
You're going to have these pits at times, right? You're going to have the highs when you're killing it, right? And you have to just kind of put all that away and not let it affect who you are.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things you can do. And I don't know many people that are successful at it. And it's something I'm working on today, is that I can't go home and take this home with me. Because if I take it home with me, then I'm going to dream about it. I'm going to think about it. It's going to affect my home life. My home life then will my wife's not going to be really happy. My kids aren't going to be really happy, right? And that stress, then I'm not going to come in here and have a clear mind of the next things I need to do to get us out of that hole.
Yeah.
Or to change that. I can't think logically. And then you should be putting other people in the room when you're talking about that. And anytime you're talking about an emotional, because they're going to, if you're saying, oh, we can't do this, because if it's about personal stuff, strike it. Line it out. So if it's like, no, I can't do this because I'll let people down. Nope.
Like, that's not a legitimate reason.
It's never a legitimate reason. Letting people down is never a legitimate reason for business. Right. And it sucks to say, because that's what drives me, right? I want to improve this for my investors. I don't want to let them down. I don't want to do that kind of stuff. But if I'm worried about letting them down, I can't make the hard decision that it takes to probably succeed.
But how do you do that without making the business some big bad monster that just stomps on everybody to get ahead in life?
I don't know yet. I think you still have to keep your humanity. I think, you know what, unfortunately, I think a lot of the big bad monsters that stomp on everybody, they get a bad rap at some level because they're very successful at doing what they're intended to do. They're a shark, and you're getting mad at sharks for eating things. Because we're like, hey, that's a cute seal. Don't eat that. Eat the ugly thing, right? Eat the bad things.
Yeah.
But the nature of business is to succeed, right? And to be the best at what you're doing. So if you don't want to do that, then you're never going to face these problems, because you'll only grow a certain amount, and you'll be really happy with your one facility that's just kind of doing its thing. And you wouldn't have brought in investors most likely and stuff. But I have to remind myself my responsibilities to them. My responsibility is as a fiduciary for the company, no matter what. And so I have to achieve what I say I'm going to achieve. And then at that point, we can stop and say, okay, where are we morally driven to go?
Yeah.
And I keep our moral standards here. It's about community. It's about fun, right? Those are the things that we drive us for. When's enough? I'll challenge myself that all the time. But the reality is, sometimes you have to be the big bad, person, and put someone else out of business.
How do you lead a team through a time when the business isn't doing really well, especially when you're being open and transparent about that? Because I know a lot of business owners that just kind of shield their whole entire team from what's going on. And then you can be the team leader that's rah, rah, rah. Everything's going great. Let's keep going. And then you have this other side that's like, oh no, things are going terrible. But when you're being transparent, how do you keep that team moving forward?
That's a great question. One thing, we're so transparent. Our P&L is updated weekly and out for all the employees to see. So they see the profits and they see the losses. They see the costs and everything, because I want them to be engaged as if they're business owners, and so they can understand how they help and drive the business. It's hard sometimes because they see that, the tough months, you're losing money. You might lose $30,000 in a month.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't know why. And you're like, well, what do we do? Right. At the same time, because I give them that trust and that openness and honesty, I think they value it. They also know that I'll come to them and say, hey guys, look for another job if that's what we have to do, right? In that I've bought some loyalty, and also show them the plans. People are willing to stay for ideas that they believe in. And they know that we're trying that. And we're very vulnerable in the fact that I don't promise success. I say, this is our plans. I don't know if we're going to get there. This is what we got planned. And they're like, man, I love that we could even have a chance. Let's say this business fails. Okay. We existed, right? You have to remember that.
Yeah.
Not every business makes it, right? Like 90% of businesses don't make it out of 10 years. I think even worse than that, right? We existed and we created something.
Yeah.
So like sometimes that's good, right? So like we can only focus on the bad, but if you just say, yep, you know what? We built something amazing here. This place is beautiful. This place has done something that no one's ever done. This is the only one of its kind to ever exist in the world.
Hmm.
That makes you feel like, okay, it's okay. Right? You know what I mean? If I'm the only platypus in the world and then I die and there's no more platypuses, at least I was here.
Yeah.
Right? And so I keep that in my head when I walk in. I try to do that with all the team here. They know that. All of them probably know far more than I think, about what the struggles and what we've gone through are. They see it, but they don't see me quitting.
Yeah.
And if I don't quit on them, they won't quit on me. When you work for a small business or for an entity like this, you get those personalities. You get to see the people, right?
Yeah.
And especially how transparent and open we are. That you get people to come to you and say, look, I really had a problem. Please don't fire me. I understand if you want to. And then you get to teach people to be better humans. And you get to teach people accountability. And, I have this book about accountability. And so everybody here reads it. And they get a chance to actually maybe, and my hope is they improve their own abilities in life to grow and to be better humans.
Yeah.
And so all that torture and all that other stuff, it makes up for it on that other side, I think.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. That was Salem Thine and his launch of EVA here in the United States. I will post a link to EVA here in Flower Mounds in the show notes, so be sure to go check them out. I'll also include a link to Salem and Robert's book, Nobody Cares Unless You Do. We launch new episodes every other week, so make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you really want to make my day, head over to throughthedip.com and sign up for our email newsletter. Seriously, I get a little ping notification every time somebody signs up, and it truly makes my day. Cool. I'll catch you at the next episode.